Today we are replacing the front struts on a 2006 Hyundai Sonata. So first thing you're going to do is take off that sway bar link I pointed out. Next, right here are going to be the brake line and the speed sensor line. So those two bolts will get those out of the way. Then you will have a 19 millimeter that's going to be right here on the bottom, right there on the control arm, your lower control arm. You'll take that off, and then on the top you have a 17 millimeter, and that's what's squeezing that onto the bottom of the strut. So once you take that bolt off, that's what's going to allow you to separate that little section. So for starters, we're going to go ahead and get this popped off. You'll get the sway bar link, and once you get that off, it might not be as easy. You could just tap that out, pull that to the side, get it out of the way. After that, next thing we're going to do is start working these lines out. So a 12 millimeter, that's going to get both of those same size. So once you get those loosened up, you can pop them out by hand. They're pretty small bolts. You can use power tools, it will speed things up. Now once you get these two bolts out, there's a little bracket on there. You're going to want to set that to the side. It will go behind the second bolt, so you'll see how it goes on once you pull it off. So just keep that in mind when you're removing it. And after you get those out of the way, you'll want to take that 17 millimeter off in the back. So we'll get that spun off. Once you get the 17 millimeter off, it may not be as loose. I've already sprayed WD-40 on it to kind of make the job a little bit easier. I have a 19 millimeter, and that's what's going to take that bolt off of the bottom. Now you can use a punch. If you get that bolt off and you can't get it out, you can use a punch just to tap it a little bit, and that'll usually work it out. Just keep in mind you want your jack under there to support that, because once that bolt comes out, that control arm is going to be free at that point. And you can use that jack also to adjust your height, which is going to make the job a little bit easier. You can adjust the height to get the bolts out. Also, you can adjust the height to help get the shock out of the vehicle. So on the top, we have 13 millimeters. On the new shock, we have 14 millimeters. So just keep in mind hardware can change depending on the manufacturer. Now that slipped off pretty easy, again, just because of the WD-40 that was sprayed on before, but it could be a little bit tighter. If so, you can just give it light little taps on each end. Just go left and right on it, and you can get that thing worked down to where it can pop right out. So old shock, new shock, that was just showing the difference in the two. We're going to go ahead and pop these off. Again, 13 millimeters are what's existing in there. Just double check your hardware. Now at this point is where I was telling you can use your jack to lift it up or lower it, because if the shock doesn't come out easily and it looks like your control arm's trapping it, you just want to lift that up just a little bit, and at that point you'll be able to slick the shock out of the bottom without removing the control arm. There is a front and a back on the shocks, so just keep that in mind when you're putting them in. Make sure you orientate that so that it is going to fit inside of the little bracket that's in there, and you will be able to see where they go. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get it in. There's a little notch that's going to slip inside. So what I'm doing now is just lining up the top bolts. I'll put it through the top, and then I'll reach over and screw those bolts on by hand. You're going to want to weave those lines, the brake line, speed sensor line, put those back exactly the way they were when you started. Now you want those to go in the right direction. That way when the car's moving and the shocks are going up and down, you're not going to have any issues with binding or have any problems with having lines break just because they're too taut or stretched out in a direction they shouldn't have been. And again, once you hit those 12 millimeters, you don't have to really torque those down. Just hand tighten them up. They're not holding anything together. And you can use that jack to adjust the bottom. That way it's a little bit easier to get that 19 millimeter bolt to slip through. Then just hand tighten it on the one end. Then get the power tools and make sure all your bolts are torqued down. I would go back through, check the 17 millimeter that was on the top. Double check your 19 millimeter once you get that in, torque it down. We'll put this link on, and this is going to be the last part to go in. Again, this is where I would like to go through, double check everything, get a good look at the job, make sure all parts that you touched have been double checked, torqued down as tight as you need them to be. Check your specs, And at this point, the job is going to be finished. You can get your tire back on and lower the vehicle. So look through the bottom, you'll see shock and wear.